It's Dave Johal once again for Punch Up Boxing. Pleased to be joined by my colleague Ra Hokum, and today we're going to be discussing the Joyce versus Hrgovic fight. But first of all, Ra, how are you?
Yeah, Fab had a good day down in London at Stamford Bridge for the UK v US show. That was a fight zone, and our newcomer, or who was an old comer, one of the founders of our channel, Bally, was up in Manchester. So, but me and you will be doing the fight review. I guess he's already had an eyeful of the fight.
Absolutely. So, what better place to start then with by just asking? I mean, Joe Joyce once at, should we just say that the peak of his career, um, he's now won one out of his last five fights. A defeat to
Hmm.
Filip Hrgovic on Saturday. We never did predictions on this one, but I got this completely wrong. I thought, looking at Filip Hrgovic's form, um, he hasn't looked great as well. Let's just be totally honest. And I thought Joe Joyce was going to beat Filip Hrgovic maybe by stoppage, but a unanimous points decision for Filip Hrgovic. The question now, Ra, and loads of people are asking this as well, is what next for Joe Joyce? I mean, obviously it's not in our place to say a fighter should retire, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I spoke to our colleagues over at iBoxing Hub about this. I used to be quite adamant that, for the credibility of the sport and to sort of stave off the detractors, that maybe the sport needs to do more to get fighters to leave at an appropriate time. And the appropriate time is before the cumulative brain damage has a higher chance of long-term health effects, of course. But I've since changed my mind on that because if you look at how many fighters, when they leave the game, their lives sort of spiral out of control and they sink to all sorts of depths. I mean, there's great fighters from our youth. You'll remember Michael Nunn, Jermaine Taylor, when their careers were over, they sunk into a life of crime and
Mm.
ended up in prison from, being greats of the sport to the indignity of being petty criminals, or in maybe hardened criminals in their case. And some people might say, yeah, but Joe, he's from a good background, and he won't sink back into that lifestyle. But you even look at our national hero, Frank Bruno, when
Mm.
he was forced out of the game because of that eye injury. His mental health was affected hugely, and eventually his own daughter had to have him committed for his own safety. So I really do think that, the nature of this sport, it's so all-consuming for these guys that it's very, very difficult to let go. And if they are forced to leave before they've really given everything to the sport, uh, I mean, it could cause them, all sorts of mental health issues. So I think it's almost a case of suffer mental health problems now or later. Um, so yeah, I'm inclined to think if Joe Joyce wants to carry on, uh, fine. I'll still be interested in watching him. But I do think that in this situation, for guys like him, the veterans who insist on carrying on, the fights have got to be appropriate. And what that means is there can be none of these young hotshots upcoming being put in with him. There are other fighters like himself who've seen better days but still want to fight on, and I think that some of those fights can be interesting. So yeah, if he really wants to, yeah, I'll say give him the support still. And let's not forget, I think on Saturday night he did show he's still got some, something left. He did. I thought it was a decent performance. It weren't dreadful by any stretch of the imagination. So yeah, there's a few other veterans around that could make for interesting fights. I'd be interested to know what his contractual situation is because there was rumors that he's on a guaranteed amount for the
Oh,
duration of his contract.
oh,
And if
really?
that's
Wow.
the case, that might be why he's fighting on. Maybe his management have said, yeah, look, just sit tight. They've got to pay you this much as a minimum. So maybe that's why.
And he's gone from, world contender to now possibly in the gatekeeper region now, similar to Chisora. I mean, looking at
Hmm.
Chisora though, he's now earned an IBF world title shot, essentially, hasn't he? So, and he's older than Joyce. But I think,
Hmm.
the talk of Joyce was when he first came on the scene
Yeah.
after the bronze medal was a case of, we want to fast track Joe Joyce because of his age, because of, I mean, don't let's not forget his first fight was against Ian Lewison, who wasn't a pushover, should we just say?
Mm.
That's a very learned fight because at one point, Ian Lewison was supposed to be the next big thing as well in the heavyweight division. So I think we're in a. You're absolutely right. The younger guys can be quite dangerous. There may be possible fights out there, but the highs of Joe Joyce's career when he beat people like Joseph Parker, but then when he came up against Zhang, two defeats on the trot, two heavy knockout losses. That was the undoing of Joe Joyce, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm usually loath to be critical of people in the industry, but his management team, there's some serious question marks need to be asked of them. Um, you know, he was WBO interim champ off the back of that great win over Joe Parker, and look at how great that win has aged. Um, and he could have sat tight and waited for his mandatory shot at Usyk. Now, I know what people say that look, that if you're fighters, you can't just sort of sit on your hands and wait. To some extent, I agree, and I also don't like fighters who do that. Um, if they're trying to avoid a hard fight. But that wasn't the case with Joyce because you might remember after he beat Joe Parker, he was saying, "Oh, go on, give me one of the champions. I want Fury. I want Usyk." It wasn't Joe's fault that Usyk and Fury were taking, the right almighty time to get that fight over the line with all the contractual, wranglings that went on for, was it a better part of a year before
Yeah.
the Riyadh season came in and paid them enough to, get it over the line. So that wasn't Joe's fault. He wanted to fight the champions, but I think they could have done with easier opponents than Zhang. Not knockovers, not journeyman, but that, like I said, management need to. They've got some serious question marks to ask because, as you said, it was after the Zhang defeats where he deteriorated quite quickly. Interestingly, people talk about the amount of damage he's had, but you mentioned there Derek Chisora.
Hmm.
You can bet your life Derek Chisora's taken more punches to the head than Joe Joyce in
Yeah,
his what 49 fights. And Derek's been in periods. I was just having a quick look at his record where he's lost three on the bounce. And as you said, he's right back in line for a world heavyweight title fight. So um, yeah, I think his management though, the matchmaking's got to be right. I mean, even the fight with Hrgovic, I actually think the Dillian White fight is more of an appropriate fight for his level now. But to get that replaced with a guy who's all right, coming off a defeat, but one's still, I guess, in the prime of his career as a heavyweight, 32, still in the prime. Um, Again, I think bad decision to select him. So
it would have been interesting to see if the fight with White actually happened, what the outcome of that could have been. I mean, Filip Hrgovic was a banana skin, wasn't he? He is a dangerous fighter. Um,
mhm.
but I still would have thought, Joyce had enough in him to beat him. I thought he was gonna knock him out, but then timing, he did take some heavy shots as well in the fight. So I think that the real question now is if he does go on, would the public still be interested in a fight with Dillian White, Hughie Fury? Is that the sort of level now just to build yourself back up if you carry on? I mean, he said, let's be honest. He said he is going to carry on because it's something
Mm.
that he loves to do. This is his job. He said that.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
hazed, not confused. He had time to think after he walked out the ring. So he did say that. So he's making a decision in the moment. But again, are those two names that spring to mind?
Um, See, I don't think I mean maneuvering back into position for a crack at the title, it is a long way back. I would say at this point that shouldn't really be the focus. The focus should be, as for fighters often in their career, it should be all right, what's the maximum amount of money uh for minimal risk? A very difficult thing to get right now at this point of his career. Hughie Fury, well, let's be honest, that's a no money fight and high risk in the sense that he'll probably get beaten. It won't be an exciting fight. It'll be a bore. That's not the sort of fight that I think fans will tune in for. I'll give you some of the names that I think will be interesting. We mentioned D Dillian White. Got to remember he's had a few bad knockouts in his career, very inactive, hasn't had a significant win over a contender for several years now, is it? I mean, he's had a
Joseph
couple
Parker,
of sorry.
probably the win against Joseph Parker, significant win.
Yeah, I mean,
Probably
and
the
how many
significant
years
win, is
ago
it?
was that? A lot of water's passed under the bridge since then. So he's
Yeah.
been knocked out twice since then, badly by Povetkin and Fury. So I think he'll be a shadow of himself. So that's an appropriate fight. Um, Tony Yoka, his old Olympic rival. Yoka, all right, he's a fair bit younger. I think he's 33 or 34, but he's never looked convincing as a pro, has he? And I think he went through a phase where he lost three on the bounce. Um, and he's back to fighting like journeyman on small hall shows. So, again, that could be interesting because you could sell it as the sort of Olympic final grudge match type thing. I think that'd be intriguing. Um, a name that I think would still draw interest, Deontay Wilder. He's coming back in June. Again,
That would
looks a shadow of himself.
probably be
Sorry.
more that would do more for Wilder than for Joyce. The risk is more on Joyce, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
but I mean, how good has Wilder looked in his last few fights? I mean, it'll be intriguing because it's like, well, can Wilder find that right hand still from his last few fights? It seems not. But then Joe Joyce is someone slow enough that, well, maybe he can find it against Joyce. So, and look, Wilder's still a big name, so I think that could be another intriguing one. So yeah, I guess those are the sort of names. But yeah, I mean, any of the sort of top contenders, the upcomers. No way would I like to see him fed to someone like a Moses Itulma, for example. That'd be horrible. Definitely wouldn't want to see that. Um, so yeah, and I think any talk of him like headlining as well, I think that's got to go out the window.
At
These
the
sort of
moment.
fights, they're the sort that they're going to be on the support card for say a bigger fight.
And just very lastly as well, Filip Hrgovic, he did call for Joyce to retire, not out of disrespect. He just said, look, it's time now to hang them up. Where does he go from here? What's next for Filip Hrgovic?
Philip, he's always flattered to deceive. People in the industry, including ex-opponents and sparring partners, have always said they think he's going to be a great heavyweight because he's technically so good. I think we saw flashes of that. He's also got a tremendous chin. We know that for sure because look at the right hands he ate off Dubois without going down. We know what Dubois can do, and Zhang's left hands as well before that. But he always seems to just have dreadful conditioning. Um, what I think Filip Hrgovic has got to accept is that he's always going to be a B-side. And I think he's going to have to accept he's got to be in shape all year round. Whenever there's a big title fight or an eliminator, he's got to be ready to say if there's a pullout with an injury or a, failed drug test or whatever, he's got to be there to say, yeah, I'll step in at 2 weeks' notice because I'm in shape, but actually be in shape, not just say you're in shape. Um, because look, against Joe, who's, as we know, is a slow-paced fighter, how many times did Filip have to go on the ropes to take a breather? Quite often. And yes, he only had 5 weeks' notice, but like I said, he's got to get it out of his head that he's going to get the big opportunities with a full camp, etc. So I think the sort of guys he's going to have to maybe try and target, say maybe the winner of Bacoli via Jagba, guys that aren't, high risk, low reward. He's going to have to take those fights, until, and then if he can win those, it'll pay off later on down the line. But he's a long way off the title scene as well, and he's
Yeah,
going to have to
no,
work his way up.
yeah, I agree. I think, staying in shape, conditioning is a big thing as well. And who knows, I think what it proved on Saturday night and potentially this year as well, losses don't mean a lot.
Mhm.
And I think the shining light in all of this is looking at Derek Chisora IBF world title shot as well. So, and he's older. So potentially the door is left open no matter what Joe Joyce decides to do. But yeah, so look, there you have it. Those are our thoughts. Raw, what have you got going on? We've got a bit of a quiet one this week until we go into full mode next week.
Yeah, but look out for the interviews with the WBC Grand Prix participants. We've got that great series, a few more of those to come. And yeah, hopefully I'll be speaking to some other fighters locally just to catch up. And as you said, quiet one in the UK this week. But yeah, then the rest of the spring is going to be very busy.
Next
Yeah,
2 weeks.
so look out for maybe another international trip is on the cards for me. So I'll keep you posted.
Good stuff. Raw, all the best, mate, and we will, yeah, we'll hook up soon.